And I ask you, Michigan is a hideous anachronism. You think about it, here's Texas. Their legislature meets 3 to 4 months every other year. Somehow they grow like crazy. They're currently running a $5 billion surplus. They essentially have weathered the recession extremely well. Here's Michigan with a full-time legislature, paid second highest, I believe, in the nation. And somehow we have a chronic $3 billion annual deficit. You can't get out of it. And they keep raising taxes and making it worse. I'm worried. I'm worried because if this isn't reversed rather quickly, we're going to lose the generation, the retirees and all, to other states. We're going to lose the wealth to even have a comeback. I'll give you an example. Today, Michigan has more government employees than it has manufacturing workers. How often do you hear that in the media? It can't be stressed highly enough. You've chosen what was a premier creator, and you've substituted redistributors. There's no productivity in that. In fact, it's a negative product. Secondly, Michigan's job level is now back to 1990, 20 years ago. That's where our job levels today stand. If trends continue, and they certainly are continuing, then by 2012, Michigan's per capita personal income will be below that of the state of Alabama. In 2008, Michigan net lost in population the equivalent of Ann Arbor, 107,000. And this bleeding continues. But that's not the point. I mean, that's the point for it, but we know that. My point to you is an optimistic one. I ask you, what better economic and fiscal platforms could there be to retake political control? And it's the same recommendations for the national platform of reform. Our candidates must convince voters that we know how to transform an economic dead cat bounce into an unstoppable tiger. You have to, number one, reverse government spending trends at all levels. You have to suspend or eliminate all rules and regulations that prevent our most competitive energy firms from tapping whatever it is, the nuclear that we have better than anywhere else in the world, the oil, the gas, the shale, the coal, and also to resuscitate our deteriorating refining capacities and resources. Essentially, unleash Prometheus. Thirdly, removal of the too big to fail doctrine and other government subsidies for special interest firms and unions. And that includes phasing out very quickly your Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, which are going to be getting us into more trouble. Fourthly, a Federal Reserve has to be focused exclusively on maintaining a stable price level. That's all a central bank is really set up to do. If it can't do that, it doesn't go on to step two. There is no step two. That is the trust we have among one another, is the transactions of the currency. If you can't trust that and you get inflation, you essentially have violated everyone's trust. Look at Germany and the aftermath of the 1923 hyperinflation. You'll understand it. You'll understand it through the German authors or anyone else you want to look to. So my answer there is, the governors of the Federal Reserve System, they have to have an equal threat system. And they have to be prosecuted and penalized for conducting monetary policies that result in sustained inflation. Again, there has to be a visible and a credible threat system for bad behavior. And you don't want to incent further bad behavior. Hold them responsible. Obviously, in the private sector, again, this is this asymmetry. There's a profit and loss system, and there's a reward and punishment. And we need that symmetry that you go in government and in the government agencies as well. Fifthly, the rejection of the doctrine of political correctness, this PC. Quite frankly, I'm very impressed. I've spoken in many forums, many groups, but you seem so attuned to the very essence of the problem, you're ahead of me. And you're ahead of the politicians. You're ahead of the politicians here, locally, statewide, and nationally. Keep it up. As you know, what you're saying in preempting my further remarks is that PC today stands for you get away with lies, you accept myths, and lame excuses. That's got to come to an end. Very important. And that's what the politicians have to hear. Sixthly, you have to remove the asymmetries of the Wagner Act, the Labor Act, and make them the same as the corporate, if you're going to have them at all. The government, they have to, if you're going to govern the influence of corruption and so forth, this too has to be symmetrical across the board. Seventh, you have to adopt legislation to assure that all federal programs, rules, regulations, the rest, retroactively and prospectively apply to every public sector employee just as they do to the private sector persons. And we've covered that with the latest. You see, folks, if you don't, and you don't instill these types of incentives to behave properly in the public sector, to legislate in full sunlight of public scrutiny, there's a natural tendency for elected officials to continue pretending that all of their promised goodies are free. And to an economist, I'm not a politician, but as an economist, you can't, it's an insurmountable problem for the private market system. How do you compete with free? You can't do it. There's no such thing, it's not reality, and you can't do it. Politician, it's a near-term possibility, but it's not a long-term, durable mode of behavior. So what I'm saying is with such reforms and expectations and platforms in place, I forecast that we would get a real GDP growth averaging a 4 to 5%, very robust rate for 5 years, bringing unemployment rates down from current 9 to 10% levels to the 4%, possibly 5%. Stock market would handle this superbly, shooting far beyond the previous peak on the Dow at 14,200. Heaven knows that most of the traditional leading indicators today suggest a much better future. The problem is that Americans remain very skittish and uncertain about the future, and the world no longer takes us seriously. I'm certain of that. But remember, and this too is the optimism I have, this was the perfect constellation of events that converted a Carter disaster to a Reagan world of recovery, reform, and respect. Ladies and gentlemen, my New Year's resolution this year was to do my utmost to keep America a land of liberty, opportunity, and personal responsibility. And I know just from your presence here this evening, you've made a similar quest of yourselves and of friends. Resolutions to commit more personal time, energy, funding to groups involved in what? Just what you've been at, what you're doing. It's the tea parties, the town hall events. Be an election watcher, write letters to the editor, remain engaged. And I thank you for that. Because if we can get it right, keep it right ourselves, then our economy will regain its health and bring astounding prosperity and confidence to ourselves and to future generations. May it come soon. Thank you very much.
David said he will accept questions from the audience. Please keep your questions brief. Don't get into long editorials, if you would, please. And so it'll give him time to respond to your questions. We can hear from as many people as possible. Thank you.
You're talking to the wrong person. I'm the one who has to keep my answers short. I will start here and then go over here. Thank you.